provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines at first at 9. New facet of press freedom. Parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran elaborates on how the focus has shifted.
Today, unfortunately, our struggle seems to be against the press.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister thinks media freedom backfired.
I defend to my last drop of blood your right to abuse me.
Tighten your belts. Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira warns even parliamentarians will be subjected to austerity measures.
I think all ministers, MPs, everyone must stop bringing these fancy imported cars. I'm not going to allow them to do so in the next year. The fuel formula is coming on the 10th again. So prepare yourself.
The way forward. Dr. Pakyaswathi Saravanamuthu on why absolute truth is a must.
We cannot be told that we are equal citizens until and unless everyone knows what happened to us.
Another revelation. Namal Kumara says he was paid to incite communal violence in Sri Lanka. Another twist in UK spy poisoning. The true identity of one of the two suspects in the Salisbury Novichok poisoning saga revealed. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Eknaika. Now let's start with your local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena, who delivered his oration at the annual general debate of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Tuesday, held bilateral discussions with Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir bin Mohamad today. In the meantime, Sri Lanka signed 2 agreements with the United Nations Development Fund yesterday on the sidelines of the General Assembly.
President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister of Malaysia Mahathir bin Mohamad held bilateral discussions on the sidelines of the 73rd United Nations General Assembly today. During these discussions, Malaysian Premier extended his fullest support to the government's ongoing housing construction program for shanty dwellers, which is implemented under the Urban Development Program. President Maithripala Sirisena also held discussions with Director General of International Food Policy Research Institute, Shengen Fan, in New York. Director General of IFPRI had discussed health and food habits of Sri Lankans and the possibility of drafting a memorandum of understanding to ensure healthy food intake to minimize malnutrition. Shengen Fan had also invited President Sirisena to visit IFPRI headquarters in Washington and also attend the IFPRI conference, which is scheduled to be held in November in Bangkok, as the chief guest. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka signed 2 agreements with the United Nations Development Fund in New York yesterday. These agreements were inked to establish a social impact fund and a social enterprise fund, which will develop fields that are directly linked with social developments of the country. President Sirisena and First Lady Jayanthi Sirisena also attended a reception hosted by US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump for all the visiting heads of state at the UN General Assembly. The reception was held at the New York Palace Hotel last night.
Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says he is willing to defend press freedom in the country, although media in Sri Lanka have left him a victim. The Premier expressed this sentiment addressing an event in Colombo today. Also speaking at the event, TNA parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran said that focus on press freedom has shifted to a struggle against the press due to responsible conduct of media.
There have been investigations and inquiries that have commenced but not proceeded too much with regard to the assassination of Lasantha Wickrematunge, the abduction and disappearance of Prageeth Eknaligoda, the assault on Keith Noyar. However, in my capacity as Member of Parliament of the Jaffna district, I must make mention of the fact that the largest number of journalists killed in the last 20 years was in the district of Jaffna. 6 in one news agency alone. About 14 Tamil journalists were killed. And it is unfortunate that no investigation has yet commenced with regard to the killing of any of the Tamil journalists. It's important that measures are taken in respect of these two issues that I raised for press freedom to be real and to have got to a particular point when you can celebrate. Today, unfortunately, our struggle seems to be against a press that is irresponsible, a press that has no inhibition in reporting untruths. We are exasperated time and again by the irresponsible conduct of the press today in Sri Lanka.
Your chairman asked me what is happening about the inquiries. And I told him, one of the police officers who are inquiring told me, so how can we inquire when the media is abusing us and making us the villains? So this issue, I think, is a good one for you to take up in your deliberations. If you want evidence, I will certainly supply. We have stood up for the principle of media freedom. And that is best seen in Sri Lanka by the fact that the most abused person in the media, directly or indirectly, is me. All of a sudden, from standing up, the right of expression, now I have to say, like I think someone in France did, I defend to my last drop of blood your right to abuse me.
Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira insists that even parliamentarians will have to tighten their belts as he will not make budgetary allocations for luxury vehicles. The minister made the remark while responding to questions on the rupee's depreciation at an event held at the Royal College in Colombo today. Minister Samaravira also warned the public to brace themselves for another fuel price revision, hinting at another price hike on the 10th of next month.
Sri Lanka has the highest foreign reserves we have had in many years at the moment, $9.4 billion as foreign reserves. But I, as finance minister, did not want to put too much of our savings as intervention because we need the savings even more than this to pay our debt this year and next year. We have put some money in. Now we feel it's stabilizing around 168-69. Having said that, I of course believe this situation will continue for a few more months. I think all ministers, MPs, everyone must stop bringing these fancy imported cars. I'm not going to allow them to do so in the next year. And then also we may have to reduce your fancy imported goods for a while. Stick to the local products for a while. The exporters are doing extremely well. I can't tell you when it will get better because yesterday, for example, the fuel price went up to $81. I saw in CNN saying they were predicting if the US-Iran situation gets worse, it could go up to $100. The fuel formula is coming on the 10th again. So prepare yourselves.
Following the event, Minister Samaravira was quizzed on the criticism his comments attracted with regards to his views on the Archbishop of Colombo.
No one had criticised because I told the truth, and I still stand by what I said. Minister of Science, Technology and Research, Dr. Sarath Amunugama questions whether Sri Lanka is ready to change its existing mindset and accept technological changes in taking the country forward. Speaking at the annual conference of Organisations of Professional Associations of Sri Lanka held in Colombo last night, the minister stressed that everyone should take a strong stand in transforming the society since Sri Lanka has become the sick man of Asia.
We must have an attitude of mind which is pro-change. It is that you disrupt your traditional thinking to find new ways and new solutions. Are you ready for that? Are we actually mentally strong enough to accept this type of disruption that is becoming the norm today? Now here is another problem. Can the state sector keep pace with these changes which is adopted easily by the private sector? Because if the private sector doesn't want to adopt it, it will die. In the state sector, we are talking of digitalization, but the railway system, I think, is not even in the 20th century. But we have no information. We have hundreds of think tanks, but what is the result? In Sri Lanka, nobody knows. We have a large state sector, we are pouring money into that, and nobody knows what is happening there. So we have to take a strong stand. We have to transform this society. And for once, the opportunity is given for us to transform that society through the digitalization process. Today, because of our lack of will and our lack of foresight, and I would say because of our cowardice of the elite groups, Sri Lanka has become the sick man of Asia. We are not optimizing the capacity of this country.
The Colombo Fort Magistrate permitted the Criminal Investigations Department to refer DIG Nalaka de Silva to the Government Analysts Department to record voice samples over the alleged assassination plot involving the President. Meanwhile, Director of the organisation AntiCorruption Movement today divulged to media that a Sri Lankan living in France funded him to incite communal violence in the country.
Operations Director of the organisation Anti-Corruption Movement, Namal Kumara, held a media briefing today in Kegol. During the briefing, he made another revelation on how he was funded by a Sri Lankan living abroad to incite communal violence in Sri Lanka.
Tushara
Piris, who is in France, sent me cash. I took all the money under the directions of DIG Nalaka de Silva. Tushara sent that money to organise terror activities such as assassination of Muslim ministers and attacking mosques. His plan was to launch a guerrilla attack on Muslims who are troublesome to Tamils. He tried to receive more funds from the Tamil diaspora for that purpose. He tried to use me for that. The CD, which I handed over to the CRD yesterday, carries some photographs of those checks and receipts.
In the meantime, the Colombo Fort Magistrate permitted the CID to refer DIG Nalaka de Silva to the Government Analysts Department to record voice samples over the alleged plot to assassinate the President. Accordingly, DIG de Silva's voice samples will be recorded tomorrow. In the meantime, the CID informed the Fort Magistrate that the Defence Secretary has permitted the detention of the arrested Indian national for a period of 3 months for interrogation. He will also be directed to a physical, mental and orthopedic clinic under the supervision of a judicial medical officer.
This story is, of course, currently trending on our YouTube page. You can recap this story by logging on to the Other Derana YouTube page as well. Also read the full story on www.otherderana.lk. Now moving on to other local stories. As I said, moving on to other local stories, the joint opposition is critical of the government for attributing what it calls the current economic crisis to the growth of the US economy. Addressing a media briefing held in Colombo today, parliamentarian Shehan Semasinghe charged that the government is now attempting to control what the people consume in a bid to address the ill effects of its expenditure.
The government is unable to control the cost of living in Sri Lanka. Therefore, the government has now started applying the dictatorship. They're trying to dictate what Sri Lanka should consume. The main excuse they give is the US economy is getting strengthened, therefore the Sri Lankan economy is going down. There aren't any economic indicator which shows that due to the fact the US economy is getting strengthened, the Sri Lankan economy is crashing. There is absolutely no economic crisis. It is only the reason the government is unable to control the expenditure. There won't be any investments coming into Sri Lanka because people who intend to invest are complaining that ministers are openly asking for bribes. There is a serious allegation regarding the electric railway system where one minister and a state minister has asked for bribes of 5,000 million rupees. The state minister has even gone to Italy and tried to negotiate further conditions of this investment. Now it has come to a stage, even Sri Lankan economy was better during the war times.
Leader of the Lanka Sama Samaja Party, Professor Tissavitharana, warns that Sri Lankan economy is on the verge of collapse owing to the present government's questionable policies. Speaking at a media briefing held in Colombo today, he added that his party calls on the government to respect democracy and hold elections soon.
Our economy, our political environment and our social environment are collapsing. Our country is on the verge of bankruptcy, and this is a result of the present government's wrong policies based on what the IMF, International Monetary Fund, has insisted that they follow as a return for the loans that our government has taken from them. We have got more and more into debt, and at all levels our reserves have fallen, and this government does not have any correct policies. It is only selling our country to foreign powers, multinational corporations, and destroying our independence and sovereignty. And as a result, now it is resorting to extra parliamentary means of trying to stay in power. It is delaying the holding of the provincial council elections. We of the Lankan Samasamaja Party call on this government to respect democracy, hold elections and abide by the verdict of the people.
Executive Director of the Centre for Policy Alternatives, Dr. Pakisoti Saranamuthu, is of the view that absolute truth about the 30-year-long conflict must be acknowledged in order for the country to move into a post-war era. Speaking at a book launch yesterday, Dr. Saranamuthu insisted that no one can be told they are equal citizens until everyone knows what happened.
The book Voices of Peace, written by Sara Kabir, was launched yesterday under the auspices of a number of politicians and members of the intellectual community.
If we understand that there is a common language of pain, of suffering and of loss, then I think we can begin to move towards post-war. We cannot be told that we are equal citizens until and unless everyone knows what happened to us. We need therefore, an acknowledgement of that truth. And that is something that, of course, is happening at a very low level. It is not happening at the level of the state. And that if we do not begin to see it that way, that always, in some way or another, and in some time or another, this country will always be at war with itself because it cannot accept the diversity and the unity, the richness and prosperity that can come out of that diversity.
It is so important that we as a nation recognize that there are multiple narratives to the conflict. Myself and the commissioners of the OMP, we have visited several areas in the country. We have also had private discussions with some of the families of the disappeared. When we did privately speak to some members of the families, we could see some did not recognize or were not aware of the suffering of the other. It is very important as a country, if we are to achieve true reconciliation, that we acknowledge the suffering of all parties. And it is unfortunate that sometimes people refuse to acknowledge that there were violations, and perhaps violations on all sides, suffering on all sides.
A tense situation erupted today at the Colombo Municipal Council premises when depositors of ETI Finance Limited gathered to show their displeasure to Councillor Deepa Idrisinghe, who is also a director of ETI Finance. Depositors claim that Councillor Deepa Idrisinghe was a member of the CMC's Standing Committee on Poverty Alleviation, yet justice was not served to ETI depositors. They also demanded her removal from the CMC. They said that the meeting to restructure the ETI Finance was scheduled for today. However, it was postponed in the final minute as the directress was attending the monthly council meeting of the CMC. Business news is on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. The Asian Development Bank has approved a $300 million loan to help in the construction of the 5.3-kilometre elevated toll highway with related facilities between the New Kalani Bridge and Gulf Face in central Colombo. The announcement was made in ADB's official website today. The new highway is expected to ease traffic congestion, improve connectivity and facilitate trade logistics in the country. ADB will also provide $500,000 worth of technical assistance for the expressway operations improvement component of the project. Now, the US Federal Reserve has raised interest rates for the third time this year, taking the range of its federal funds rate to between 2% and 2.25%, up by 0.25 percentage points. The move marks the bank's 8th rate rise since 2015, continuing its policy of gradual rate rises. Shortly after the announcement, President Donald Trump once again criticized the Fed for raising rates. Now investors are looking for clues about how high the Fed might go or sign its pace could accelerate. In a statement, the US Fed said that in view of realized unexpected labor market conditions and inflation, the committee decided to raise the target range for the federal funds rate. The Federal Reserve was widely expected to raise rates due to strong economic growth over the year so far. Now to give you a market update, the all-share price index closed in negative territory today as the result of price losses in continuous counters, such as Lankan Finance, Sri Lanka Telecom and John Keel's Holdings. The day's turnover was below the 500 million rupee mark. We now have Amanda Lokugamage from First Capital Holdings with a full report.
Our share price index witnessed a surge during the first half of trading day, reaching an intraday high of 5,891. Followed by a continuous downtrend to close at the day's low of 5,869, losing 18 points. Both turnover and volume have increased, and nearly 39% of turnover was derived by Guardian and Ceylon investments. A net foreign outflow was witnessed for the 7th consecutive day with high foreign participation, and there were no parcel trades witnessed during the day.
Moving on to your currency update, the Sri Lankan rupee fell further to a new record low of 170 rupees and 67 cents, weighed down by dollar demand from importers and from foreign banks to pay out foreign investors selling government securities. We have the day's foreign exchange rates now.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Time to look at what's happening around the world. Now, one of the two suspects in the Salisbury Novichok poisoning has been identified as a highly decorated officer in Russia's military intelligence service, the GRU. The online investigative sites Bellingcat and The Insider uncovered information identifying one of the two suspects previously named as Ruslan Boshirov as Colonel Anatoly Chipega, a Special Forces veteran.
Russia had maintained that the two Russian men identified by British authorities as suspects in the Salisbury poisoning of an ex-Russian spy are mere civilians who were on holiday in the UK. But an investigative website now says one of the men accused is a military officer who received an honour from Vladimir Putin. Following the attempted poisoning in March, UK investigators identified one of the two suspects as Ruslan Boshirov. President Putin claimed Boshirov was a civilian, and on Russian TV he himself said he visited Salisbury as a tourist. But the website Bellingcat says he is actually an intelligence officer by the name of Colonel Anatoly Chipega. He has served in Chechnya and Ukraine and was made a hero of the Russian Federation in 2014. The BBC says that it understands there is no dispute over the identification. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova dismissed the new claims, saying there was no evidence.
Moving on to sport, Sri Lanka had an abysmal showing at the Asia Cup, and Sri Lanka cricket requested captain Angelo Matthews to step down following a string of poor performances. The move led to Matthews sending a letter to SLC's Chief Executive Officer Ashley De Silva offering retirement from the two shorter formats of the game if selectors and the coach deem he is unfit to play. The move gave rise to a polarising debate within society. What was Matthews attempting to achieve when he offered to retire? And what of the fact that the chairman of selectors, Graham Lebroy, opting to officiate a women's match, paying little attention to Sri Lankan team's performances in the Asia Cup? These are the lingering questions.
The selection committee of Sri Lanka cricket requested Angelo Matthews to step down as ODI captain last Friday, 10 months after he was asked to resume captaincy duties, and appointed Test captain Dinesh Chandimal as leader across all three formats. The move came after the entire Sri Lankan team became an object of hilarity and scorn in the public eye, with Matthews bearing the brunt of it, especially after the team lost at the hands of Minnows Afghanistan, which ended their run in the Asia Cup. Matthews was also dropped from the looming England's tour of Sri Lanka. These manifestations prompted Matthews to write a letter to Chief Executive Officer of Sri Lanka Cricket Ashley De Silva, offering retirement from the ODI and T20 formats if the selectors and the coach deem he is unfit to play. Matthews has scored 331 runs in his last 10 ODI and T20 matches and captained the team for nearly 6 years, winning 49 and losing 51 out of 106 ODI matches. One of the most prominent cricketing websites, Cricinfo, reports that Matthews' bad running between wickets led to this situation. Cricinfo quotes chairman of selectors Graham Lebroy and coach Chandika Hathurusinghe as saying that Matthews has a particular propensity to run his partners out, and it was a major contributor to being left out of the squad against England. It was documented that chairman of selectors Graham Lebroy refereed the Sri Lanka vs India women's tournament held in Sri Lanka, while the Asia Cup was underway in the UAE. This is how Lebroy rationalised it.
When Sri Lanka Cricket contacted me to be the chief selector, I told them, look, I have the responsibilities with the ICC as a match referee, and that I'll have to continue with it. But they repeatedly approached me, and then what I did, I got clearance from ICC. So what ICC wanted to know is whether I would be a selector for the women's teams as well, and I said no, as the women's will be managed by a different committee, and that I would be selecting only the men's. If you may remember, I put my hand up when most of the others ran away from this task, and Sri Lanka cricket was really struggling to find appropriate selectors to do. So that's how I managed to do the selector's job, at the same time to be an ICC match referee.
It must be said, if what he claims is true, Lebroy cannot be held accountable for missing the Asia Cup. The problem lies with the system and the people who sanctioned Sri Lanka's chairman of selectors to play a dual role. It is essential that a chairman of selectors watch the side perform to be able to make educated judgments on player selection. So where does Lebroy's commitment lie? With the ICC or the SLC? That's another question. Most crucially, who is going to answer these questions? So far, no one.
Manusha Jayathilake is at the Adadharana Weather Centre with your forecast first.
A very good evening everyone and welcome to Forecast First. Temperatures across the country are showing a significant drop in comparison to last week, but as usual, northern and eastern provinces of the island will be much warmer than rest of the country, with numbers set to reach 31 degrees Celsius, especially in the Batticaloa district. Lowest temperature will of course be from the central hills at 20 degrees. Moving on to your rain forecast now, showers or thunder showers are expected in all districts tomorrow, so don't forget to carry your umbrellas. There will also be some misty conditions during the mornings in some areas. That's all that we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Let's now take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. And before we go, we would like to take you to the Udawalawe National Park in Sri Lanka, which is an important habitat for the Sri Lankan elephant. The national park was created to provide a sanctuary for wild animals displaced by the construction of the Udawalawe Reservoir on the Balawe River, as well as to protect the catchment of the reservoir. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Theyre 24/7.